Blink, blink, blink. There we go. Markers. There. Yeah. It's um, structure. No info. Base knowledge kind of stuff. What kinds of things do you talk about? We'll need to start with structure. Role function. We should have talked in here about governmental structure. Yeah. Artistic skills are horrible. That's going pretty good. Wait. I think you talked about structure. Say. General police.
Morning, Diego. So, how are you? You good? Morning, sir.
Good morning. Since it's first week of class, I try not to get too heavy into any content because there's anybody change classes and stuff. Really? I don't remember what kinds of base things do I usually talk about across my classes? Because there's usually a number of things that I like to do. Depending on how much time, how much work we have to do. Sometimes I start polling classes to get an idea of where things are.
Hey.
And so we'll see. I don't know if I'll do that, but I'll probably talk a little bit about some base stuff. If you've not had any classes before. Governmental structure, that'll be one that'll be a little bit of police and stuff. Good. Not all.
Let me sit up front.
There you go.
I
Cool.
don't hear so well anymore. I sit in the back, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I do have a tendency to not project as well sometimes, particularly if I'm getting to something complex. I start, what'll happen is my tone will go down, my speed will go up. That makes it worse. My wife, she hates it whenever I do that because, especially like what I do, if I get into something that frustrates me, then I'll start mumbling, and that's training for being around her probably. Where it's like, I'm gonna say something nasty. You don't need to hear what I'm saying because it could be about you, but I'm pissing and moaning about something. And so anytime she hears me start mumbling, she gets really you're doing it again. Yeah,
Is that, is your wife?
yeah, she points that out pretty good for me, because,
Well, when you've been married a long time, you find out your wife points out about everything you do wrong.
you need that. You need that. It's like, how many times it's like, I don't see stuff like that? Or it's like, it's like, in fact, like, yeah. Me in that moment right there is not a good person. Sorry.
Well, speaking of your wife, how was your summer?
It was really good. I didn't do much. I actually, really lazy and I slept.
Relaxed.
Yeah. That part was nice. Let's see. So I've got 5 kids they've all gotten bigger. It's one of those things, like in the last year, it's been crazy how fast all that happens. Like my son, oldest son, he turned 16. He's like 10 pounds less than me now. And like my height, it's like, it's creepy. And I don't know what to do with that. Then he got a girlfriend. It's like, oh my God. No, no kids. Just wait. I'm glad you got a girlfriend, because now I worry less about you. It's like, I had a lot of worries there. Social, yeah. But no, he's doing really good. My daughter Claire, she's my favorite in a lot of ways. I tell her that in front of everybody too. You're my favorite, because she's the one who, if she doesn't like something, she'll click right over to the dad voice thing. It's like, hey, you cut that out right now. I really like that. You keep that up. And then, let's see, number 3, that's Liam. He weighs 140 pounds now. He's only 11. He is a chunk, like just a
big.
brick. He's, what is he, like this now? And he's just a brick. And so it's like, I'm curious to see whenever he decides to become a little bit more physically active, he's just solid. And so he's the one I worry about accidentally crushing stuff, because most of the time he's real chill, lazy kind of thing, playing on video games. It's like, when you start doing stuff, you're gonna worry about crushing things, because you've got more strength than you realize. Let's see. After that one, that's 3. So number 4 is Walter. He's no longer the baby. Oh my goodness. That's where you get the oppositional defiant disorder coming in there. Oh my goodness. His favorite thing he's been doing as of late is the constant screaming. Like he's like upset about something. I was like, hey, quiet down. I'm gonna hit you now. Keep that up, I'm gonna hit you. And of course my wife doesn't let me.
How old is he?
He's 7. Old enough to know better. Yeah, old enough to know better. He's just smart and knows that if he pushes it enough, he gets away with stuff. And so we'll work on that one. And of course, Grace, she's 1.5 years now. She just started walking a little bit slower there. But no new surgery since like May. So good golly, that one was rough. I'm just a lot serious, but she's doing a lot better. No more big medical stuff going on right now, and just kind of growing and getting along. So it's going pretty good.
Have you thought about putting your 11-year-old Liam into any sports?
I need to, because at first it was some physical therapy, so he had some coordination issues, because he just is that lazy kind of thing. He loves his video games and getting him moving. I need to get him involved in that.
Well, do you know where the sheriff's department is here in town?
I don't actually.
It's on South College Avenue.
Okay.
It's you know where like the Domino's is and
Yeah.
the post office is.
Yeah.
So straight across from there is a little shopping center, and if you just go straight across from that, there's a South College Avenue. There's a little gym called Thunder Muay Thai and Ludo Libre. That's where I train at.
Oh,
And in there we got some kids that are like between the ages like 10 and 14 that train. Ludo Libre is pretty much jujitsu, but
nice.
do Muay Thai and that over there.
Cool. That'd be a lot of fun. Okay, I'll look into that. Because that's something that would be really good for him to get him positive movement kind of thing.
We got guys that compete. I competed in a tournament last month in Tulsa, took second. I'm competing in 3 weeks in Oklahoma City.
Nice. I like it. Okay, cool. I'll look into that. Oh, yeah, definitely. All right, so it is 10:03. Let's go ahead and get started into this. I don't think any more people are going to pop in. I don't know. We got 1, 2, 3, 8, 7, 9. That's about the same time we had. That's the same number of people in here last time. All right, so today we're going to talk about base knowledge kind of stuff, general information. We'll talk a little about structure, role, and function from a very kind of unrefined kind of overview standpoint. So that way, it's like kind of have an idea for what this looks like to some degree. We'll get into the specifics when we get into the chapters, of course, in terms of here are the specific levels. Here's the number of things across, federal levels, federal agencies, federal officers, state levels, county level, all that kind of stuff. but we'll talk about some of those things that underlie things. Some of the stuff I like to talk about in the semester is kind of more philosophical because it's the base kind of balance that's underlying most things. In this system, the one I like to have people weigh, I think I might start there. Because that's an important one, because it's echoed in policing quite directly. But I like to view this one across the entire, whether you're talking criminal justice system or government at all. And so it's like anytime that you're dealing with the things that we're weighing here, I like to do it this way, and I put on one side good and the other side right. Because we want things to be both good and right? We're doing things correctly and it's doing something positive. But on the other side where it gets a little bit more descriptive, more discrete for here, you're balancing individual rights with the public good. And here in policing, you do that quite literally. You're the people who have to make those decisions, and that is a hell of a thing to do. Because that's gonna be something that in the individual moment, the individual people there, and everyone else that's surrounding them, and your job, and society overall, you're weighing all of those things, you have to figure out, what do I do? That's gonna be fun. All right, that's kind of one of those scales that you should have going most all the time for things. Particularly in these areas because of one, the size of it, two, the power associated, and three, to some degree, the distances that are possible here from those who are doing this, right? Because ideally in your structure, as you move up, everyone's still kind of engaging in this, but only those who are directly on the ground are doing it with real people, right? They're doing what's real. To some degree, they're doing real stuff too. Not that it's not real, it's just not as physically manifested to some degree. And it's like, that's, I mean, we start getting into the physicality stuff. It's like, why do you think we have use of force? Sometimes things get physical, right? So these are the things that one of the big basements. That's gonna have to do with governmental structure a little bit to some degree. In here, so you got 1, 2, 3, 6, 8, 9, 10 now, 9, 30. Good. Yeah, that is the exact number I had last time. What type of governmental system do we have?
Type of government system do we have?
Yeah.
Well, it's a representative republic. It's not really a democracy, but some people think it is.
Exactly. And that's the thing I like to bring up at the very beginning of class, because it's like those naming conventions, to some degree, those words mean something. Like if you're in methods classes, like, a good example, democratic, we throw that word around, what's that mean? To some degree, we have people, I guess, vote, and we do counts to see where people actually sit on things. That's good to do, but if you do that for everything, that's the worst governmental system that we've seen in some periods of time. It's like, that's a really dangerous one, because when everyone's in charge on numbers, no one's actually in charge, and so it's just whoever can influence people. And then if you get someone who's trying to influence people, that's usually a dark person right there that's gonna do something bad sometimes. Sometimes they wanna do something good, but that's a huge danger. It really is. But we run into it all the time, so we have to figure out how to manage those things, and you go right back here. All right, that representation is key. Why that is key is because you're doing that same thing here with the system. Here it's more like same time individual versus public. Anytime you say public, basically you're saying group, and just cross-reference whoever you're dealing with whenever they say that. This is actually not make my methods class stay about that word right there. Because that's a good one. What the hell do you mean with that? Use that in the government thing, you key into all kinds of things. We the people is a big one. I like that. Many individual good doing what's right. So positive, all that stuff's underlying this. That distance there is important. It's an important facet of it, because anytime you deal with people, you start getting into big numbers. It's almost a Stalin thing. One death is a travesty or tragedy. I forget how he worded it. 1 million is a statistic, right? You start dealing with big numbers, you can really take out the humanity of things really easy. That's why the structure matters so much. What we do here in our system is the best because what it does is it balances this same thing. What it does over here, of course, you know, you have your executive, legislative, and judicial branches. So you've got three things here to balance. Good, you need three things to balance, but pull into this one for a second, because this is the one that directly does this. We have the legislative side. Two houses to Congress, what are they?
Senate, no, House.
Yeah. Yeah, Senate and House of Representatives.
You're making me think too much here.
Because I said House, I think.
It's
So
been a
yes.
long summer.
Yeah, so yeah, Senate and the House of Representatives, right? When we look at numbers, how many representatives are there?
Well, it depends
Mm-hmm.
on how many people there are. Is it 650,000 per representative? It used to be, I don't know if that's still the same.
I don't know, and those things are always, you know, when it gets to the math side of stuff, it's like people don't pay attention to that because they don't like the math, so I don't know the math, it's like the actual math. And that's something people change a lot without even noticing, because people don't look at
But
that.
there's probably 400 and
Yeah, I think that was, last time I looked, it was in the 400 range.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this one is numbers, right? Population numbers. This one is everybody's equal here.
Two.
The idea itself, whatever it is we're trying to do, it's got to make it through both of these things, right? That is an important facet of it because you're trying to balance out this thing over here. As you're doing that, well, it's like if you just follow this process, what happens if it makes it through one and not the other? It goes back over here, and there are ways that they can overrule this if the number changes. Because what happens is now you got enough people over here that's kind of by proxy getting over here. You got enough support over here that it's kind of overwhelming the other side. And so not only do they weigh this thing, but they also have a system in place, a way to look at it that identifies, okay, what happens if we do need to actually weigh this incorrectly because we have to address them. And so it's like these things move in all kinds of different directions. That balance is the only thing that actually matters. We have that balance, you have stability over time. Stability over time, people can grow from, through. If you don't have that, everything goes away. Life itself is redefined. The reason why we did so well as a country, we're doing that. We don't put someone in charge and just let them decide for us. We don't. Yeah. We try not to let people use this like an axe skill, but it still happens. So that's a little bit about governmental structure. In terms of policing, term gets thrown around for it, but I'm not going to give you that term. We'll see if you guys stumble into it. Okay, so if I ask you to describe the structure of policing, what would you say? What does policing look like in terms of a formal structure?
You're talking about like departments, chain of command, or?
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, so you got chain of command. That's like spelled command. Okay, what's that gonna look like?
It's gonna look like the police chief,
Mm-hmm.
the assistant police chief.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have captains that are gonna be over different divisions, whether it's investigative, patrol, narc, whatever. Then you got lieutenants, same thing, lieutenants of different divisions or different shifts. Then you're gonna have sergeants. Same thing, different divisions, different shifts. And sometimes, if it's a big enough department, they'll have corporals. And then underneath corporals, you'll have different levels of police officers. Normally, a police officer level 1 would be like your entry level, to police officer level 3 would be your senior police officer without being in a supervisory role.
Excellent.
And then aside from those, you'll also have FTOs, field training officers, which are responsible for training incoming officers within their, depending on which department you are across the US, anywhere from a 3-month probationary period to a 1-year probationary period.
Yeah. So basically, you start from the ground and you go all the way up to chief kind of thing. You chief all the way down back to the ground, right? Multiple levels here. Each of these divisions, another way of looking at it, specializations kind of thing, are focusing on certain things.
Yeah, that's a good question though. Does the chief answer to somebody, mayor like, or some, I don't know, I'm guessing.
Depends, right?
Most of, some answer to mayors, but the majority of the time, they'll answer to the people that actually run the town outside of the mayor, so like, the board of trustees.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
So it's like sometimes they can be appointed by the mayor and sometimes it's the people of.
Yeah, so they take different structures, so that'll be-
Like Tahlequah, for instance, Tahlequah, Police Department is very interesting in that, most, police departments, when you become chief of police, it's a permanent position, whereas city of Tahlequah, their, police chief is an elected official.
nice,
That's what I was,
yeah.
yeah.
So that's what I was gonna get into a little bit there. So sometimes you'll have this election process. Typically, what you'll see though is it's gonna be a city board type of appointment, whether that's gonna be the board overall, sometimes it's the mayor, sometimes it's like, they'll have a position like city manager kind of thing. And so they'll make it fit into that. And so in terms of structure, what you really get back to is what you said a second ago. And ideally, what you have is these things actually feed into the public itself, right? So you have some level of public on the top, not at the bottom. I don't know if we mentioned theory last time when we were talking a little bit about structure. It's like that's one that's really important. Where you place the public in relation to these things, because it's on both sides, right? You're gonna have them over here on the ground, of course, because you're dealing with them over here, but you answer to them too. And so you gotta scrutinize something that you answer to. And like, that's kind of a difficult thing. And with the political side involved, sometimes that doesn't actually happen. And so you have problems there. Big thing though, I want you to see here. Okay, so this is gonna be what kind of a system here? That could be, that's gonna be some departments, right? So any one department. Okay, does that department answer to any other policing department?
They'll answer to a state agency.
Yeah, so you got some state agencies.
For Oklahoma, we have the OSBI, the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigations.
Good example, OSBI. Typically, though, what you end up with is more of a reporting structure. It's more of just a, basically an acknowledgement. The direct control here is gonna be very, very limited. What these people do themselves, like there's no direct command between state level and local. There's no direct command between federal and state or any of the other levels. Decentralized, that's the big term I wanted to see if you guys, and you're getting to it. That it's not a centralized system. If you look across countries in the world, a lot of them are centralized. Kind of good examples would be like England, South Korea, fairly Western in their nature, but you look at their policing system, that's a completely different animal. It really is. And what you end up with.
I was gonna say that because they're one, like we have a state and a federal system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, because it's not broken down that way, that's kind of why it's.
A little bit. So what we end up with, and it's one of those things that's really, really interesting that we really get into it.
Yeah,
You got a few things going on there. So the biggest one's what you're starting to get at. That's gonna be size, right?
okay.
Most of those that are centralized, they're not gonna be nearly as big as what we are. I mean, if you think about it, if I'm in Washington DC, how long does it take me to drive out to California?
It's about 24 hours.
Yeah.
We're at, yeah,
That's great.
that's one of the conversations I have with one of my coworkers is, since I was in the military, they've never gone out of country before. I mean, you could literally, being in Spain,
Everybody there in
Okay.
Spanish?
you take, 2 hour, train ride or flight, you can be in Germany, you can be in Italy, you can be in
Different
France, you can be in
language.
England, Ireland.
Yeah, different languages and stuff. It's like, holy crap, how are we managing this? Right? Those areas are so small. You start running into this right here. So it's like that decentralization thing, why we do it and why it's so important here, matters a little less over here. How it matters though is that command thing. If we're gonna start doing that, we're gonna push down from the top to do something, whether it's good or bad. It's like, that can sometimes come with some force to it, right? It's like when you get a command from the boss, it's like, oh shit, right? When you start stacking this up in a structure, this distance here is a real big problem. Right? That's right back to that Stalin thing. I see someone as a person, see a number. Right? That's a really big problem. what ends up happening is this structure here has enough power that the structure itself can twist. And then whoever's in these positions, if they want to, they can bend it to their own level. You see that a lot in some places where you'll see it, probably. South Korea is not as bad. It's been a long time since I've talked to anybody who's over there to see if there's anything social going on over there right now. But there's very, very formal structure, very, very, it's literally. But their country is one that takes a couple hours to drive across. Like, you're dealing with one small population, and then whenever you're dealing with it, you're actually dealing with just literally one of these. Right? So our thresholds for what's acceptable is a lot more consistent, so this becomes easier. Here we don't have that. It's like, we have a culture, our culture here is, I don't know, there's a few different elements here for what I would really call American. My favorite is one that's kind of, it's a very negative statement. I think I heard it best in Rage Against the Machine in the 90s. It was, blank you, I won't do it, you tell me, right? Like, yeah, no, you can ask for something, you try to tell me to do something. We're the ones who are like, no, go ahead, try to make me. That's this country. It's like, okay, so that decentralized thing probably won't work. That's gonna cause a whole lot of problems. Plus, you have all of the different cultures, all of the different places, all of the different people involved. So it gets really, really, really much greater span here. And that inhuman thing can come back in really easily. That's why we don't do it. It's also why we have that structure of representation in the government, because there's too many people, there's too much space, there's too many things going on. So we have to figure out a way to get it all to work. And it's not easy. That separation though is very, very important, because if you look at the stuff here, when this thing changes in those areas, huge problems can take place.
Like you're saying with South Korea and a lot of the Asian countries, a lot of them are mostly ethno-homogenous.
Yes.
Whereas here in America, we've got,
Uh-huh.
everybody, people of Asian descent, people of Native Americans, people of European descent,
Yeah.
people of.
Pick a
Latinx.
place on the world, you'll find
Yeah.
people from there here. It's like,
Well-
why? Because this place is good. It's like,
That's
what it
even
is.
changing in America though.
Yes.
Because if you look at some cities
Mhm.
with the influx of, I don't wanna get political,
And that's the sad thing, is that sometimes
It's like
it's inherent.
the influx of people, they're from different cultures and they take over
Yeah.
and they have like no, what do they call those? No,
The numbers game.
well, it's like no police, it's like they shut them
Mhm.
out, like
Yeah.
no-go zone or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. So you'll get that. That's so England right now.
Yeah. it's the same
That's
thing.
exactly it. So they're going through this massive issue right now. We're having issues with it right now in our country in terms of like population numbers.
Mhm.
It's one of those things that's like, that's actually a really scary conversation. So if you get into it, you'll see
France
it's like,
is also happening too, because
Yeah.
they're actually starting to have a large, they've been having it for a while, but they have a large,
Mhm.
Middle Eastern influx going
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah. Well, here's what's really interesting. So I like to, it's because whenever we start talking about what's actually going on, politics things going, because everyone's trying to, I don't know, there's people trying to grab power and that kind of thing. So it's like, okay, what I usually do is I go back, okay, a couple generations ago, we had the same conversations. It was related to Roman Catholics though.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's like, yeah, so what it is, what Roman Catholics were doing is, here in our country, they'd move into an area, right? So new cultural element added. They reproduce, right? Numbers change over time, they take over. We don't like that because they're redefining society, right? Okay, they'd have those conversations like the 1950s, 60s, that kind of thing. We don't really have those much anymore now for some reason. But it's this thing right here. You get enough people in an area, we define the areas we're in. And so that's a good process to have. What happens is, what are we doing? Where are we going? If you deal with this country, you look at population numbers, we don't reproduce, right? On average, if you look at we don't replace ourselves. That immigration stuff, legal and illegal, is the only thing kind of keeping us going in those numbers. So it's like, okay, that's gonna be a problem. You need to fix that. Over there, what they've had is England, they really don't reproduce. They've had a huge influx of immigrants at the same time. And so you got areas where the entire social network is kind of broken down. You have no-go zones, you have things like that. And as you're trying to balance this out, out of that numbers game, get enough people on one side to agree with something, this thing shifts. Can we put forward the idea that here's how we need to work it so everyone can survive? Or is it something everyone's gonna look at themselves, their people, and do what's best for them? It's like, That's gonna be a big problem forward.
So is policing is always evolving though, really with the culture.
It always is.
Yep.
And that's where you start getting right over here.
That's kind of, that could be a real problem when things start to clash.
Yeah. And so you start getting into role and function.
Yeah.
And so it's like, in terms of functions, kind of been talking about those things already. It's like, yeah. Actually, let's just do that. We'll start with function and then we'll talk about roles. Because we see it's like, okay, you got this kind of system. You'll see this for your, local, state level policing agencies. Start getting into the federal stuff. It's like, they'll have similar structures, but it's like, they're all over the place. You start getting to titles and all that kind of stuff. Ugh. It's that command though, and that distance that's the most important, because if that distance increases, you're less human. Okay. So functions. What functions? What are the functions of policing? What kinds of things do police do?
Enforce laws.
What else?
Supposed to protect lives and rights of individuals.
This sounds like maybe a strange one, but they're trying to make police into social workers. So what's a little bit different category? That
That is.
seems to be the where it's going.
It is. It is. There's been more and more push towards that kind of stuff, which can be good and bad. It's one of those things that's like, what exactly do we mean when we look at this stuff? It's like, I can do something or I can do a whole lot of nothing and make it sound real flowery. Like, this is the one that's like, usually what happens is people think about these kinds of things. Real flowery. I feel really good.
That's problematic, I think. 'Cause
It is. It is, because what you end up with here is, you have the stuff that works. You have those that are really directed, really, really put their energies to it. Really, whether it's, you know, the personal involvement, getting to know the people who are having problems. It's that way it's like, you're no longer just accountable to the fact that the system's going, these actually, no, I'm gonna give you some shit about this. I was like, I might, you know, be involved with you and have a really uncomfortable conversation with you, or just be watching, you know that I'm watching. That kind of thing. Like, that might be something good. Could be helping them out with a social issue. Let's say, you know, I showed up with this DV thing, a bunch of kids that are having issues. Gonna be a social worker over there. Or it could just be, you know, it's not really the flower that they're doing. It's that they're spending a whole bunch of fertilizer to make it look like they're doing something. That's politics again. That's actually all of politics. Is most of it's just that fertilizer stuff. It makes it look like they're doing, all it is they're shoving shit.
So does law enforcement depend on, oh, how am I gonna put this? The level that they're at, like if it's the jurisdictions, like, okay, so certain police forces can only enforce certain laws,
Mhm.
like you can't, I don't know how it works.
It's a little bit different. I mean, what it is you'll have this as an element across all, but it will change depending on what you're specifically talking about. Like, that's gonna be things like, you know, it could be like the low level, you know, it's like traffic enforcement, parking stuff to,
City ordinances,
yeah.
because every city has a different ordinance, different
Mhm.
cities have different laws
Yeah.
themselves.
How long does your grass need
But
to
I
be
mean,
before you have to have someone go out there and give some?
You could still enforce, if you see somebody kidnapping somebody.
Oh, yeah.
You could still enforce that law.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it might be,
Oh, yeah.
every state and federal, they're all the same, they just.
Well, you start getting into arrest authority and that kind of a thing, and so that's one of those that's like, you know, basically, that's, you know, once you have that probable cause established, you can do anything so long as it's, you know, if you're a state officer, it's like those actions that violate state laws or federal laws, if they violate
Right.
federal law, they probably violate state, and they scaffold in like that. So any one action that you do is violate the law. It's like they can hit you with any number of systems that they want or charges, and that's gonna be that prosecutorial is using prosecutor discretion.
But like up here, for example, kind of what you were talking about, between like Tahlequah PD, Sheriff's Department, Highway Patrol, Cherokee Nation, Marshal Service, they have a compact that does cross deputization. So that way they can assist one another. So that way, you know, technically if it's a Native American committing a crime or a crime being committed against a Native American,
They're not
you know,
state.
that would only be something that the marshals can
Yeah.
handle. Well, now with the compact of cross deputization,
That's a very
Tahlequah
specific
PD
one.
can now
Yeah.
get in assist.
Yeah, and that's a very specific situation.
Some in
related
the
to
news
McGurk.
about that too, about light horse in some county.
Yeah, so that's a really weird one that's come up because
Jail,
of,
or I don't know what.
yeah, so that's that McGurk fallout. Basically what happened with that one was, the Supreme Court recognized the fact it's like, some of these.
Half of Oklahoma is still a reservation.
Yeah, so it's like, you can't hold people to laws that don't apply to them. And so what they had to do is they had to figure out a way around it, and you're exactly right, they start making a
lot of-
cross-deputization memorandum of agreements, understanding across those agencies.
That's really confusing, all that stuff.
Yes.
A lot of Native American and law enforcement agencies around here, whether it's Muskogee Nation Light Horse, Cherokee Nation Marshal Service, UKB Light Horse, whatever it is. A lot of them have had cross deputization compact agreements between sheriff departments, police departments. Like you can, as far back as like the 2000s, like you can look it up on the records and see all the
Mhm.
cross deputization agreements they have.
Yeah, cause Oklahoma's kind of a different animal.
It really is. It's like that one's like one that's really specialized, really unique.
Yeah.
Like in terms of history, it's like, that one doesn't, that one's not got like precedent.
Not only just Oklahoma itself, but another one that's also a big, huge animal is if you look at Navajo Nation, like they have the biggest reservation in America, and their reservation encompasses 4 different states. So then you gotta think about the BIA police officer that patrols Navajo Nation and has to go across 4 different states.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean they can't arrest people for stuff they, or does it?
Typically what it means is what you'll be looking at is if you're doing something wrong, you're gonna get arrested.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's kind of built in that process of probable cause. Ideally, what you really have to do is only get to where it's more than likely that they're doing something criminal and you don't need to know the specifics. It's like, that's obviously identifiable as something that's more than likely criminal.
Yeah.
Come with me, you know, that kind of a thing.
Normally what'll happen, for example, is like with the marshal service, if they arrest someone that's not native, they'll do what's called a CTO, a courtesy turnover, and they'll give it over to Tahlequah PD and let Tahlequah PD actually charge them. Same thing, if Tahlequah PD arrests a native, they'll do a CTO to the marshal service or the FBI. and
Wow.
they'll do
You're holding them basically, and then you report them.
Yeah, sort it out.
You're
once
like
you
an
take them.
eyewitness, kind of like.
Yeah, you have to sort it out once you take them. But yeah, and a lot of communication and a lot of other stuff. Just texting.
I'm probably getting off in the weeds on that.
Yeah, well, and it's one of those things, it's like you see just how complex it gets very, very quickly because you're dealing with this right here. It's like individuals. Oh, gosh. Yeah. And so you've got law enforcement, that protection, life, liberty, you have that social work, you don't actually need to say service kind of thing. The whole protect and serve. What other role do police officers serve? Think outside of policing. Two big ones. These always come up on my mind because the way people, you put like a hole people don't put into this. Say, I'm gonna say this word right here. Agent of assimilation. Cultural agents to some degree. The laws that we have, they're put into place using those political processes, those social things. So those are things that, in theory, we agree with that are good, right? You're the ones who have to go in there and make sure that people follow those things. And so where you have those issues, they come up. It's like, you're the ones who are gonna go in there and try to get people to abide by that stuff. You keep doing that up over time, what ends up happening is people change. Like theory last semester, it'll come up in culture conflict theories or to some degree in some of the socialist organization stuff, but that's kind of a political thing, right? I'd go off into a rant about Chicago. Speaking of Chicago, if you guys aren't watching the news, what happened last night there? A whole bunch of stuff at DNC, but there's
Probably at the
protests and
Israeli
stuff.
consulate, probably.
Yeah, that whole bunch of protests and that kind of stuff. It's like, keep an eye on that, because I don't know what's going on.
They were kind of going out there.
Yeah, and so what you have there is that process right here. Because those laws, whether it's the serious ones like, you know, homicide and murder and all that jazz, or whether you're talking about, You know, hey, how many cars you got parked on your lawn? Right? It's like, you need to mow your yard. It's not a prairie land. That kind of thing. So it's like, this is literally what this does. It becomes a little bit more apparent when you start thinking about, this country over time, particularly with like the influx of immigrants. You can deal with the ones that are taking place now, southern border, northern border, or you could look at, historically, whenever there were, famines and that kind of thing. Usually what you see is an influx of people here because of opportunity. And so when you get into those kinds of stories, you can see directly right there. My favorite one I've got is cultural conflict. It wasn't fold, it was, I'm gonna blank out on the name. But basically it's a story where it's a literal story about an Italian family that moved over here and that culture thing. Italians here, we don't look at social relations and sexual relations the same way they did over there in Italy in like the turn of the 20th century. If you did that to an Italian's daughter, they're gonna kill you, right? That's honor. That's an honor killing. It was acceptable in their society. You move over here, you've only been here for a few months and that happens, you kill that person. Here we'll arrest you. Our culture is different and we're going to enforce that on you. Sorry, right? So that's kind of how that works. That's the big scale. Small scale would be more the minor stuff.
Isn't there a Muslim thing with that too, of daughters or something like that they're killing? I've heard about that happening.
They've got a lot of stuff going on there. So it really, when you start dealing with the Islam Muslim stuff, it's like, you almost have to go right up here and be like, okay, when we start dealing with that, what tenets of it are the ones that you actually hold and the ones that you promote and put forward? Because as you get into those kinds of texts, that one's got a few different lines that's like.
Does that talk about enforcement? Is that what you mean?
Well, what I mean there is your
You gotta, if
culture.
somebody murders somebody, you gotta try them for murder. It's a law. I mean, if
Well,
you
technically,
don't
we
cut
still
your
don't do that
grass-
now. We have opportunities right here, right now in our country, for people in this system right here to kill people who are our own citizens without any trials whatsoever. But that's a different conversation. I'll have that one in a second. What it really is here is it's that numbers game. And as that plays out over time, depending on whose numbers are going up, they influence this. This is gonna influence that political thing, what arguments are taken over there. And those people are trying to get elected because they answer to the public.
Yeah,
And so this and this influence this, and then it works down over to here, and then it works back over here to, well, that assimilation side. Right, so it's one of those things, it's a big cycle. It is. Starts over here, and it moves this way. When you start getting into the religious stuff, it's like that's a really hard one because as you start looking at the groups that pop up in different areas, it's like, yeah, you classify them all as Muslim or even if you're doing like protests, it's like, yeah, anti-Israel protests. Like the ones in this area are gonna be a lot different than the ones in this area.
You got Sunni and Shia Muslims.
Yeah,
Not only that, you have, depending on how strict or adherence they are to Sharia law, because not all Muslims
yeah. So you
are
got a
strictly
whole
adhere to it.
bunch of issues. Basically start, focusing in on, it's like, okay, what elements are you focused in on related to those that are put in any religion, whether it's
so
peace.
basically the police
Or
trying,
war.
as an agent of assimilation, are they trying to give the public knowledge of that's a crime? Like some countries.
To some degree, it's something that happens naturally as you're dealing with it.
You know,
It's like, as I'm going to go in and like crack down on this area for whatever thing that I'm gonna do, if it's just like, let's say it's just something minor like parking, right? I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna issue some tickets today, and people are gonna be pissed off, okay? More in a few days, I'm gonna do the same thing, okay? Not quite as many people this time. They might be learning, okay? If I keep doing that, without really trying to influence this thing, it will change because people recognize, yeah, I'm really sick of that. I don't like that influence. That kind of moves away from. That's that process. If we do it right, what we do is you'll hit it on each front. That's why they do the whole like, oh, by the way, there's a drug checkpoint over here. Why? What you learn already is to stop drinking and driving, right? And you're talking to people on that bit, and it's like, no, they're not gonna learn it all. Right? But we still have to send that message out to some individual will, right? Because that thing's like, yeah, you start getting into the peace and more stuff, you start getting into religious stuff. That'd be like talking about my favorite way I've ever heard put. I don't want to set that one up because that's one it's really funny. If you look at any religion, you're gonna see a lot of, I guess these are parables, basically stories. What they do is stories are written in a way that open up for you to have individual interpretation, so you can take it out of what you want. That's why when you read stuff, it's like, I read this story, I pulled out something different, because you're in a different place when you read it. Here, what you're dealing with is look at, you can say peace, war, that kind of thing. What is it? Phrase I'm gonna give you is this. No, I'm not gonna write it, I'll just say it, it's even better. Okay? Christian churches. We'll go with that one, because that's one, you know, they get picked on a lot. That's why I like them. I don't like things that get picked on. Those are the things, they're getting picked on for reasons, so you have to pay attention, that kind of stuff. Sometimes gets into that. This one, the phrase, the laying on of hands, what are we talking about? Prayers and that kind of thing, okay? Start pushing against a churchgoer, and what'll happen is that statement right there, the laying on of hands, let's reinterpret that to something else. I'm gonna put my hands on somebody, right? Proclivity for peace and war. All religions have those kinds of elements in there, and so basically you have to deal with this. Okay, you say you're this, I'm gonna have to sit and talk to you for a while to figure out which one of these you are. That's not an easy thing, and in some places it's like that cultural thing comes in, and it's direct. They want to do this. It's like, why? Probably because of the pressures that they've had in life beforehand, or that group has seen over time that has set them on that path. So that's a whole nasty thing. It's very rough, because you're dealing with people on average and trying to also deal with an individual. Not easy. This is a big one. The really, 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 really big one. The most important role of this thing right here. Citizen. You, at the end of the day, are a regular person too, right? It's like you're given a huge amount of authority, a huge amount of power just to help things out. But at the end of the day, it's not fucking you. Right? You're just a regular person. That's a really good way to look at it. Because if you start looking at it the way as you're the embodiment of that power, ooh, snap. Things are going to go awry very, very fast. And you'll see that come up in people too. Your primary thing overall is you are a citizen. What does that mean? You're taking part in all these processes too. Well, it's the cultural side, the governmental side, that kind of stuff. You guys get to vote, you guys have investment in it. And in fact, it's like in terms of people who have investment in it, you guys got some real skin in the game, because you guys are involved in it. As long as we're trying to do what's right, it gets a whole lot easier than if we're not. If we're not, it's like that makes things more difficult until you get so bad it makes it really easy again. Right? That's when you're starting to load people up into things and shift them places. Like, that happens too. We've done that a lot in this country. If I said, here's a really good one. Can I give you an idea for the amount of danger that's involved in this? Executive orders in the last 5 years. Right? Massive overreach of authority. Will people go out and do it if they're told? A whole hell of a lot will. That's frightening, right? If you look back at the history of this country, usually people focus in on things like Japanese internment camps. Sometimes if you get in a really, really deep conversation around here, you might get into like, it's like the Native American thing. It's like you're talking about foundational stuff, the history of this country. That's a lot more of a conversation. It's pretty cool. This thing is the most important thing. What you ended up there with. Stay at that point. This literally is the most important thing right here. The opportunities, the things that we've had, the things that we've done. Executive orders. There's one in Missouri in the 1800s. That was on a religious group. It was an extermination order. I can literally pull it up right now. People did that too.
Like Mormons.
It was, yeah. It's like, well, what do you have?
Why they
You have this right here. That's why they did it.
Utah.
Yeah, that's why they did it right here. It's like, what did you have at the time? It's like, yeah, you got the religious element. Really what it is, it's polygamy, right? You're bringing a whole bunch of women, not very many men, and you're mass producing those damn things. We don't like people. Apparently, I guess we don't like people. If you look over at this immigration, we don't like people. People come with problems. If we're in methods, one of the first things I like to do is do like a correlation between population and crime. And you're like, that's like 98%. Yeah, people are the problem. We got to help them with their problems. We will make things better, right? We don't want to force assimilation. We want to keep them good citizens. That's not an easy thing to do. And so we'll get into that over the course of this semester. We're about out of time. So that one right there, the most important role. Both these roles, functions, kind of talking the same thing here. What does it do? Enforces the law, protects, serves, sometimes in the social capacity. It will, over time, get us to work together. Ideally, if you're running government or you're running policing, you should be running it away to where you don't have to do anything. That thing should go away if we do it right, right? Hopefully at some point in the next 100,000 years, we figure out a way to interact with people on large scales and not have to have someone who manages our conversations or things like that. But so far, it's going the other way. Okay? Keep that in mind. We're doing the work right. It balances out and everything's in a better position. There's still a lot to do, but a number of those problems start going away. Keep in mind the nature of those relationships and the thing that's driving you at the end of the day. If you keep it balanced, you'll be good. More people do that, the system itself rebalances and it's good. Those who think that they can do it better, those who that's where you start getting into really dangerous territories. Because if you think you can do it better, it's not that at all. It's not about just moving things in a positive direction forward. One, it's managing how everything can go wrong. That's the bad one. That's the hard one. That's one, like whenever we get like use of force conversations, like that's the conversation you have there. Force, why do you use it? To manage everything bad that could go wrong. When does it come up? When things start to go wrong, right? If it comes up out otherwise, it's like, okay, we got some other problems there and that's what went wrong. But that's kind of the nature of this thing to begin with. We'll move into history next class. Of course, we'll start with, I'll start probably pretty broad about in terms of how they started to form, and then we'll talk about England a lot. If I remember how the book goes. Of course, you're gonna be talking about families. Is essentially what you're talking about. Policing itself is a formal thing. It's only list existed for what? Not 200 years. Before that, it was each of our responsibilities. Even more so if you had a family, because it's your families, your children, your cousins, and that kind of thing are pulled in and forced into doing this for the area that you live, because you live in that area. So we do it a little different now, but we'll get into that next time. Cool?
Yep.
You guys have a class?
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. If you guys have any questions, you need anything, let me know. And the charge for next class. If you were interested in, I don't know, remember if I had a term paper set in this class. And I think in my next class, I need to update my syllabus. I mentioned I was gonna do that, yes, Monday, but I haven't done
You did, you just said we had the 4 exams, the 4 quizzes, and the 4 homework assignments.
it. Okay, cool. Well, if that's something that you want to do a term paper, let me know. Because it's something, if there's enough people in the class, they wanna do it, we can do that. But if not, you guys wanna do extra work, that kind of stuff, fine, we'll do that. Let's see. Also, yeah, we'll do this one in here. By next class, what I would like you to send to me, send me an email. In the subject line, list out, of course, this course, and if you're in any of my other courses, include that in titles. That way I can, way to kind of go through things pretty fast, so I'm putting things in order. Let me know a little bit about you, anything that you think is important. Let me know what your interests are, what your goals are related to this field, that kind of a thing. So I can have that I can start looking at that, get an idea of what it is you wanna do, and we'll start to look at that kind of stuff on the aggregate, what we do over here. Let's see what we can go in that way.
Is that on Blackboard? You want-
No, just send me a regular email.
Just bring,
Yeah.
just email. me.
Yeah, just at some point, just email me. What I'll do is I'll put that in a folder for the class.
Obviously, through student email, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And, otherwise, with that, I will see you guys next class.
Next Monday.
Yeah, Monday. So, you guys, anything in the meantime, let me know. If this is the class where I said I was gonna update the syllabus Monday, I haven't done that yet. I'll get to
Only
that.
Monday,
I
Wednesday.
think that's our next class. Can't remember. They'll blur together. But, I'll get on that and then get that to me. Next class, we'll go into history. Cool? All right. Adios. Next class.
Hey, I had a question.
Yeah, what's up?
When will the assignments and like quizzes be open? I noticed like on the other class
Yeah,
one, like
yeah.
nothing's opened.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about that in the last class, and I need to post up the videos from last class from Monday. I haven't opened those yet, because typically during this first week, I kind of go a little bit slow, and I let get a little bit behind in the schedule. Because what will happen is,
I was the Connors.
we move a little slow in the first few weeks, we're building up base knowledge.
Okay.
And then what will end up happening is as we start getting into it, we've got that knowledge down, the rest of those chapters start increasing speed, we'll go faster through. The assignments, I'll probably start making those available either next week or just depending on how fast we get through chapter one. Because that's gonna be the first thing for how we're gonna start. Thinking, you'll have at least 1 week to complete anything that I open up. And so don't worry too much about time, but it will open up for the next week or so. And I'll probably go ahead and open up most everything in terms of like quizzes, set assignments, and that kind of stuff at your own pace. But be aware that if you do submit stuff early, I'm not gonna grade it early, I'm gonna grade it based off of due date. And so that's kind of my timeline for that, at least in theory. If you need something earlier and you've submitted it earlier, you want feedback for it, you'll have to make sure that you get in front of me to remind me of that. To let me know, let me know via email, but that's gonna be one of those things, it's like, you're gonna probably wanna get in front of me again after you send me an email to make sure that that's seen that email. Cool?
Do we need a book
Okay, thank
for
you.
this class?
Yeah, in terms of a book, ideally, yes. Could you get by without it? You could, but you'd hinder yourself a little bit. That's one of those things it's always an interesting conversation, because sometimes you don't need the book, and sometimes you do. In this field, it's like, if you have the opportunity, I'm gonna say go buy the book. But if there's limitations there, let me know, we'll talk some more. Basically, the reason I say go buy the book is that's a good phrase for every aspect of our field. Go buy the book. Like, buy the books is an important one. You just let that with policing. That's a really good one. And so it will help you a considerable deal, particularly with quizzes and exams and that kind of stuff. And as we're getting into stuff, you'll have a little bit of knowledge of the types of things we're talking about in class, because it'll follow that, but I'm gonna build off it quite a bit. Cool?
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I'd
Any
sent
other
you an
questions?
email, but the quiz for the next class is due like on the 26th, but I don't
I've got,
see it.
yeah, I've got some of them set up where they're due next week. It's like, don't worry about it. I talked a little bit about that first class. It's, I set that up as an ideal schedule. What ends up happening is this first week, there's gonna be some people moving around, that kind of stuff. So I don't really get too heavy into it, and I kind of wait a little bit. So I'll push that deadline back a little bit. You'll have at least a week to complete it, but that first one's gonna be, it'll be pretty easy. I wouldn't stress out about it, but you'll have more than a week to do it. Trying to think of what my schedule will be like, because I'm gonna be out of state for the next couple of days. I should get back Saturday, I'm gonna work on the 4th, Saturday and Sunday. It might be Monday or Tuesday before I start opening those up. So, if by Wednesday next week I haven't made anything available, remind me, okay, give me like 30 minutes, because I got the stuff, I can just pop it over and make it available, but I kind of want to hold up to see how conversations present themselves, because I'll start tailoring things a little bit to fit class needs. Cool?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? I don't think so. Okay. All right, well, we will pick up with that next time. I will see you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend.